Hey there guys, welcome back to the Solo YouTube channel. David Beebee here, in person with Tom Quayle for another video for the app Solo. This is an app for developing your fretboard visualization that we worked on together. And every week on the channel we upload videos showing you how to get the most out of it. Might be lesson videos or some behind the scenes development videos that we're going to actually talk about today. But you can get the app in the iOS App Store or the Google Play Store, and the links are in the description below. So today's video is going to be a bit of a conversation, telling you a bit about the story of how Solo came to be, its genesis and the development process, and yeah, maybe some hints as to where we might be going in the future. So let's just see. So the timeline of this is really interesting because we are still in, depending on when you're watching this, we've just been through 20 months of the strangest things ever occurred in my lifetime and most lifetimes. I won't say the word, but you all know what I'm talking about. On YouTube. But what we've done in this over that process is we came up with this app, and we've feel like we were quite productive in that time and ploughed it all into to this. But it actually kicked off slightly before all that, didn't it? So this was all like February and March 2020 when we started full-time work on it. But the genesis for it came about 3 or 4 months before, in the back end of 2019. And if you remember, we had just been to the London Guitar Show, I think it was.
It was the London Guitar Show, yeah.
On one of our kind of many car journeys around the country, doing various guitar-related activities. And it was on the way back from that. It was a bit of a damp squid of a show. I think we were a bit wet, and we just finished a hearty meal and a pint in the pub with Dr. Jake Wilson.
Yeah, with the t-shirt.
With the t-shirt there. Talking about probably nothing to do with guitar, actually. But on the way back in the car, we just got talking about practice, fretboard visualization.
Well, as we always do, fretboard visualization is the topic of like 90% of the conversations. We are that sad, but you know.
Indeed. And then we usually will argue about it as well.
Absolutely.
But on this occasion, what struck us relatively simultaneously was this idea of, well, what if there was a kind of a tool that would help someone practice and develop the fretboard visualization in a way that we have both done in a somewhat similar way. And that was where it was born, and we got really excited about the idea of, well, surely someone must have already done this. You know, it's not a unique thing to us in terms of thinking about numbers, generic numbers. We've talked about this, many times, that if you think about, take a scale, and instead of labeling those as C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, label them as 1, 2, 3. That is common ways that you
standard parlance for jazz musicians in particular.
Talk about you interact with the musicians, talking in scale degrees and numbers. So we thought someone must have done this, but scouring the App Store, scouring other kind of software-based solutions, there was nothing that we'd found, and that's where we got incredibly excited, thinking, okay, well, we have to make this happen. This is just such a great idea. You get that moment of inspiration and creativity where you think, this has been done. This is a really great opportunity.
Absolutely. I mean, at first we actually thought, we sort of had an idea of what it was going to look like. So, actually, originally would have looked very different to what you've ended up with. What you've ended up with Solo. It was quite a cool design, but there was no way it could really work. But we did ponder whether we could make it ourselves, and we very quickly found that, and actually subsequently over the last 20 months have discovered that was really naive.
Enormously
incredibly naive. But
we both have very, very basic late 90s web development, sort of CSS, HTML4 kind of experience.
Or action script, that kind of thing, if anybody's a coder out there.
Yeah, or Visual Basic. Or
but for more complex things like developing an app, even an app that on the surface seems relatively straightforward compared to some of the apps out there that you can get in terms of its functionality, it's actually a quite deep thing that our developer has created with us. In fact, Beebee had been in contact with a guy we do a podcast called The Guitar Hour, which used to be a live show, but Beebee turned it into a traditional podcast. And we have quite a large audience that listens to this podcast. And a developer had been in contact with Beebee because you'd mentioned prior to all of this, just in passing almost on a podcast, that you would like to make an ear training app that you had some idea of that would randomly generate chords that you could practice scales over. So it was this idea of
Well, what
kind
I'd
of reactive
done,
ear training.
Yeah, what I'd done is I'd recorded a whole bunch of
Playlists,
those, like hundreds of playlists. I made an iTunes playlist for these various different chords, modal chords for practicing scales and ear training over. And Mike sent us an email within the same week or 2 weeks of us having the initial idea for solo and saying, hey, if you guys ever, if you ever want to make an app of that ear training thing, then I'm, professional experienced iOS developer, and then get in touch. So that's just one of those fluky kind of coincidences that was just...
So this was prior to us having the conversation in the car, and the conversation in the car was not inspired by this email. It was just we had this idea of creating what eventually turned out to be Solo.
Yeah.
So having then discovered that actually we had a completely unique idea here that had never been done before, which is a very rare feeling, we got in contact with Mike, our developer, who actually Mike works for a really big company already as a coder. I'm not going to say who it is, but works for a very large company already as a coder, so it's very busy generally. But he's a guitarist and is super into music generally. Mike's a super nice guy, highly intelligent guy, really into guitar, and was fans of what we were doing already, fans of guys like Pete Thorne, for example, real guitarist guys, really into guitarists. And Mike, when we approached him, we said, let's have a chat about potentially doing an app, but it's not the one that you contacted about. We've got this idea. Now, of course, we then had to explain this very strange concept if you're not on improvising or jazz or fusion or, somebody who's just generally interested in the fretboard, concept about intervallic functions, about mapping out, harmony on the fretboard, to a guy who is really into, like power chords, some basic soloing and so on and so forth. And Mike has learned all of this stuff. It's quite incredible. Yeah. All of this jazz harmony in kind of a weird way because we've inserted it into his brain in quite a strange way. Yeah. But effectively, we worked together as a team, the three of us, to put this thing together. And of course, in its development process, it's changed drastically over the, many months it took to develop. Many 6 a.m. meetings for 3-4 hours working on this thing. It's been a huge amount of work. Yeah. And Mike has been incredible throughout the entire process. He's worked so incredibly hard, and every vision that we've given to him, every design tweak he's worked on, and you guys you in particular were heavily involved in the design elements of it. Well,
that's the thing. We've kind of had this cross-pollination of skills and learning of things. So one of the other things that I've massively enjoyed is the process of getting a little bit into the coding side of it and the very, very basic level. So, whilst we were doing the Android version, I actually got quite into the kind of visual construct of like editing and the coding of the how the design was.
We were both teaching ourselves Kotlin, weren't we? The particular language that's used for Android, which is a very weird thing for a guitarist to do. I mean, but it's another thing you can get obsessed with, and it's like, the skills to learn. So we really enjoyed it.
But on the same way as Mike had to take on board aspects of these core concepts of what Tom and I are banging on about, which can sound like absolute nonsense if you're not into it, we had to have some idea and concept of the basics of coding and how UX and UI and all these things work, because it was just not going to, the whole thing was not going to work if we weren't on the same page. So I think how a lot of apps can develop is that someone will have an idea and then go to a third-party company. Yes. Say a musician has an idea for an app and goes to a third-party company and describes it, and then it happens, and there might be some back and forth, but it's really handed off in a way. And we thought we might have to do that initially, but what we got incredibly lucky, because as Tom said, Mike is absolute diamond, he's a legend. We got on so well and we worked so good as a trio. We ended up forming the company Trio Software.
Yeah, so Trio was the reason we chose the company name.
Exactly, and it ended up as this collaborative back and forth, constant back and forth. It wasn't even that, it was real time. We were many meetings all together working on this. So we all have had a real hands-on approach to actually building this thing, and the patience of Mike's been amazing with us. Because I'm not a maths-based guy, so for me, the kind of wrapping my head around the maths side of it and on the basic level I've needed to is difficult, but it's been amazing. It's been that other kind of leveling up skill of trying to learn something new, and because the whole the idea of how we implement this kind of jazz harmony and how we take all this chord scale theory and like so much of that has had to have been gone in from our side, just by its very nature, because you know as much as Mike can take some of it on board, the buck stops with us as to whether that's right or wrong at the end of the day, and how that's then put into the code and stuff.
And it's an interesting process in itself, because you think about the way people improvise and the way they understand harmony. There are quite a number of different ways of interpreting something like musical harmony. It's not one size fits all, and it's not just a question of choosing which scale to pick. There are some complexities in terms of sometimes we will number things 1 through to 7. Sometimes we will number things whether 2 is now a 9. It's not always logically obvious what's going on. There's kind of a human set of things that are going on there's a set of things that are going on that are very human in terms of the way that we approach harmony. We allow ourselves certain caveats that we just all accept as being parts of the common understanding of music. So to teach this to a computer, not to teach, but to code it in a computer in a way that makes sense is quite difficult. So we had a whole bunch of roller coaster up and downs where at points we were actually convinced it was never going to work, even when we knew that we'd got the note recognition working, but some of the harmony was just like, this seems impossible to actually get around some of these issues without being too specific and boring, but to get around some of these issues to do with things like altered chords or diminished scales. How do we get an 8-note scale when most scales have 7? What about 5-note scales? How do we get around the fact that some chords don't have a third in them?
Or where the third is actually the fourth note.
Yeah,
and it's like in the altered scale. So in the altered scale, we have 1, flat 9, sharp 9. And common parlance there is that we don't call that flat 2 or sharp 2. Yeah. You could, but this is the human element or the traditional element.
We also don't call it the flat third. I mean, the sharp 9 is the sharp 9. So it isn't the third note. It's the third note of the scale, but it isn't the third of the chord.
Yeah, and the altered scale,
all sorts of other things.
So that fourth note there, so there's 1, the flat 9, sharp 9, and that sharp 9 is the third note. So then the 3 is the fourth note in the sequence of the scale. So getting around these kind of like issues that make sense to the human brain, but coding that and making that work behind the scenes is
there were many examples of that, and all sorts of weirdness that we just accept that you have to kind of program in. So there were things like that, and then some issues with just, getting note recognition to work. I mean, we feel like it's very, very accurate at this point, but again, being able to do things like transposition, being able to, there's all sorts of things with harmonics that come up that you just think, they're really big problems to solve, no matter whether you are a musician with masses of theoretical knowledge or a coder. Somebody coding, these are big problems. So, it's a real roller coaster journey. But the amazing thing with doing this, that it's very similar in some ways to learning an instrument, in that you have a threshold that you need to push through in order to get to the next stage, whether that's your technique, your ear training, your fretboard knowledge, of course, or whatever. The problem solving that we had to do for some of these things, where we would sit down for hours trying to figure out how this would work, and the feeling of reward when you figured out, actually, we can make it work if we do this. Mike, can you do this? And Mike would then figure out how to do it in a coding sense. It's been incredible, really.
And luckily, we had so much time.
We weren't doing anything else
to figure these things out, because as I say, we sat down with Mike for the first development because the timeline was that we kind of chatted briefly in the end of sort of November, end of 2019. But I was releasing Pathways to Jazz Volume 2, my course. My tuition course. Tom was releasing the Ultimate Legato Practice Toolkit. Christmas rolled around, then we were off to NAMM doing the NAMM thing. So it wasn't until the February, just as the whole virus was starting to come onto the agenda, that we actually sat down for the first development meeting. And then as everything just went locked down, well, we had no gigs, we weren't traveling, we weren't doing clinics, anything. I wasn't teaching in school. So it was, let's just plow our time into this. And because I think if that was the case, if we had not, silver linings and lemonade out of lemons and everything, is that if we were just going about our normal lives and, Mike was in the office and we were off doing everything that we do, then it probably wouldn't have happened and released as quickly as it did. Because we went from that initial first development meeting in the end of February to version 1.0 of iOS launching in 9 months, was it?
Well, yeah, released January the 1st,
Yeah.
2021.
Yeah.
I've got brain failure.
Yeah, it's still 2021, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, I mean, it didn't feel like it at the time, because I guess we were just every day doing it, or it felt like certainly every day, all day, every day doing it. But it was really quick in that sense to go from like March to January, and we've got idea, first sketches to tested, released in the App Store version. Yeah, and it's obviously one of the most rewarding and satisfying things that I've ever.
And most exciting, really.
Yeah, I mean, just to have that idea and to build it and bring it into life. So that's creative. I mean, neither of us have got albums or that kind of thing, but this is like that kind of a feeling I've had in that, and kind of like have created something that's, educacationally and, in some ways artistically, I think it's a really cool stamp of being able to bring something into being that is helpful to people as well.
Well, that's it. So, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's amazingly rewarding every time someone sends a review or an email saying how much, they enjoy it and find it useful. And we know from personal experience, from our, our own teaching and for ourselves, that, this way of thinking about the fretboard can be completely transformational for many, many guitar players. So it's great to have a tool. Well, this is the thing. We essentially created it for ourselves, selfishly created it for ourselves. And, it's because that original car journey, just to bring it back to that, we wanted this tool to exist because we were thinking, how amazing would it be to have this device that we could actually sit down and practice fretboard visualization in this way, because we were doing that anyway. And so it's great to find that other people, we're not completely insane, and other people are kind of really into that and visualizing the fretboard that way and finding it useful. And of course, especially when you find out that some piano players are using it, or a sax player's using it, or
bass players.
Someone's, said, oh, my students, I've recommended it to all of them. They find it really, really useful. That's an awesome feeling to have created something that people get a huge amount of worth out of. So yeah, we're very, very proud of it, especially now it's on Android as well. And we're extremely thankful and grateful to Mike for all his hard work. He's been incredible to work with the entire time. He's obviously not here right now, so I feel we should give him some love, as it were.
We did say he's in America, didn't we?
Yeah, but Mike's
so
obviously...
That's the reason for the 6 a.m. meetings, because Mike's in the... he's working for a big software company in the US, Oregon, in Portland, Oregon, so he's 8 hours behind us. So the only way that we could make this work...
It had to be West Coast, not East Coast, didn't he?
Was for... He clocks off and does his evening at sort of like 10 a.m, and we get up at 5:30, 5:45, and start
10 p.m.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. So he's working at 10 p.m. his time after his day job, and we're getting up super early for a couple of jazz musicians. Getting up at 6 a.m. to work it's not easy.
It's egregious,
but we did it. We did it.
Yeah, and again, it's been highly rewarding, and we look forward to those meetings, because we know, especially now as well, because you were talking about development for solo. We've got so many cool ideas for, we get so many cool ideas from other people as well. People are really interested in, I'd love this to be in there, or I'd love that to be in there. We've got some really cool ideas of our own as well. And we're constantly working on new stuff. We're working on new stuff right now, not literally now, but at this point in time, we are working on some very, very cool new features for solo, which I'm not going to tell you about, obviously, but there's some stuff which is going to be so exciting for us to release to you guys. So this is not a static thing. It's not finished. It's just continually being developed as much as we can, bearing in mind that there are only 3 of us and we are 8 hours apart, and we all have fully fleshed out careers in other areas as well. So,
I remember when we were talking in the car journey about this, about how cool it would be. I remember actually saying this, is if we could randomize, and this is one of the features, the randomize feature that I love and really sort of wanted to push for it to have in solo, is that what if you could have a scale and over a set of chord changes, and it would just randomize those intervallic functions, so you can't just play the scale shape, but you have to then pick them on the fly. And I thought that would be so powerful, because I kind of in my one-on-one lessons, in my Skype and Zoom lessons, would do this. I would act as solo, and I would generate the information and direct as to whether the student's going to play them, where to play them and stuff. And I thought, well, this would be, I can do myself out of a job here. What if there was an app that did what I'm doing there? and thought, yeah, the power of that would be incredible. And it is, once you've got over that hump of your root notes and you've got over the hump of cataloging in however you do the intervallic functions, then going to the scale trainer and randomizing the intervallic functions, or choosing various chord tones and through a chord progression and randomizing them. It's just such a strong workout for your visualization. This ability to manipulate your fretboard knowledge on the fly. It's super powerful.
Yeah, it's awesome. We're very happy to have put it together and get it out for you guys. And of course, if for anybody who's watching this and has watched a few of the videos on the Solo YouTube channel and thought, okay, I'd like to check that out, of course, you will find the links down below where you can go on the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, of course, and download that for your iOS device or your Android device, or for M1 Max as well, if you've got one of the new M1 Max. Check it out. It's a really good investment because there's nothing as valuable as the being able to develop those skills on your instrument in a way that works, and we're really, really confident that this works really well. In fact, we have proof, it does work really well for developing your fretboard knowledge. So check it out for sure. And as usual, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons below and the bell notification icon, because we upload regular weekly content that will help you get the most out of the app. And
there's tons of lessons already on the channel.
Absolutely.
Loads of videos. Also on Tom's channel as well. It's a one-time purchase as well. We per platform, so it's no recurring subscription for it. We didn't go that model, so you pay for the app.
Per platform, by the way, means iOS or Android, not iPad, iPhone. If you buy it on iPad or iPhone, you've got it for both, or M1 Mac, whatever. But you do have to buy the iOS and Android versions separately if you run multiple devices in that regard.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for watching. I hope that was interesting. Maybe we should get Mike on at some point as well.
We absolutely
that would
should.
be a really good. We should have a chat with Mike as well.
By the way, guys, we've never met Mike in person because of COVID. We've never actually sat in the same room as Mike. But
so we've set up this multinational corporation company with a guy we never met.
Absolutely.
The 21st century business, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And the music world.
Yeah. So, as I say, hit the like and subscribe buttons below, guys. Let us know your thoughts on Solo. Of course, you can always contact us using the support page in the app. And, let us know your thoughts or anything you would like us to add to the app, or any issues if you're having anything like that. And thanks for watching again. And we will see you in the next one. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.